Greetings, fellow gorehounds, and welcome back to another Blood Splattered blog. I'm the Horror Guru.
And I'm Count Jackula.
And we haven't done this in a while, but I decided since we're finally watching a 2017 horror movie for the first time this goddamn year, I would get my good buddy in to come talk about it with me, especially given the content of this movie.
Yes. Yes, it's a highly mythological movie.
Absolutely. But before we begin, I want to give a shout out to a commenter by the name of Snaggletooth75. He gave me this really awesome comment. It wasn't a comment, it was a private message on my YouTube account about how he's been going through all these really awful medical conditions and that watching my show has been helping him get through that stuff. And he really wanted a shout out in one of my videos. So here's your shout out, Snaggletooth. Thank you so much for contributing to my Patreon, and thank you so much for commenting on my videos. And hey man, keep on fighting, and you are way stronger than I could ever be, and I truly mean that. And with that said, let us get on to talking about The Girl with All the Gifts, a, I guess, British zombie movie?
I assume it's British since it seems to be set there.
That's true, yes. Based on a book by the same name that I have not read, but I have looked up what some of the differences are. Not all of them, but just a couple of the differences, and we could talk about that when we get to the spoilers. But overall, this is a really good movie.
It was really well done. It was really well written. Obviously,
God, yeah.
Obviously, they had a good starting point.
This is one of those movies where every character has a very solid point and a very good reason to be against the other character's philosophy or way of going about things.
Yeah, totally.
No one is a straw man in this movie. Everyone has a really good point at the center of what they're trying to do.
Yes, everybody.
And everyone has a really good reason to be at odds with the other characters and what they're trying to do. So it's really good in that regard. You're sitting there going like, man, I don't know what side I would take in this scenario, because she's got a point, he's got a point, she's got a point, and she's got a point. It's
it's really one of those things where you find yourself, whichever position you find yourself in would have to be the side that you take.
Exactly. And ultimately the movie culminates in a character in the main character forming her own opinion, which we'll get into that when we get to the spoilers. But basically, you have this kind of philosophical war going on with these other characters and this little girl at the center of it, who by the end of it forms her own philosophy. Yeah, and it's all, now that might make it sound really, really boring. It's not. No. This is 100% a very intense, scary, zombie movie essentially. Yeah. And it's not it's a zombie movie unlike I have seen before.
The closest I've ever seen has been 28 Days Later.
28 Days Later with a little bit of Last of Us, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot of Last of Us, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. But basically, this is a zombie movie centered around a little girl. And that adds a whole level of interesting tension to the movie to begin with. But I almost don't even want to get into what the little girl is yet until we get to the spoilers, because I feel like you should go into this movie as blind as possible, because I had no idea what the little girl was before I watched this movie, and that made the journey of the movie way better.
Yeah, it does. All I knew was that it was one of those, are you human?
Yes,
kind of situations.
I knew that much. You know? I knew it's what's actually going on here, I didn't know the nitty gritty details, which made the beginning of the movie really surprising, because I was not expecting it to start like that.
Yeah. One of the things I actually thought was really kind of funny about this movie, now that I think about it, because we're talking about The Last of Us and the Telltale Games, The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of that in this.
too. I was like, wow, it's weird, because here's actually a particular character change where movies are following the lead of video games.
Oh yeah, it kind of is. That's actually
the little girl in the zombie story is something the video games, I think, did
The
first.
only question I would have to be is, was the book written before those games?
That would be the
Since
question.
It is based on a book, and for the most part, it is essentially the same story with some minor changes. So I don't know.
Well, those changes are actually kind of major, but they all come at the end.
Yeah. But it does seem to be that they took the same similar idea of zombies that The Last of Us had, which was the idea of the fungal growth that forces them to
there's a parasite. Makes them
based on
crazy.
those ants that they found, that fungus that attaches to the ant and then makes the ant essentially go commit suicide and then spread more of the spores.
Yeah.
This movie takes a very similar approach, just kind of like The Last of Us did. To the point where the zombies in this movie actually act like these fungal growths that just kind of stand there until something shows up.
Yeah. They're supposed to kind of resemble I think they're supposed to resemble like carnivorous plants.
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
like they really still until something gets within range and then they move.
I also love the design of them because they look like fungus has just been growing all over their face.
Yeah, they do. It reminded me a little bit of like a bit more toned down version of like the Mushroom People.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally.
But whereas the Mushroom People went like real super psychedelic and crazy, like this is a little more like sober.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you like any of the things that we have mentioned so far, then you should definitely check out The Girl with All the Gifts.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We haven't even gotten into the mythology of it, but we're about to when we get into the spoiler section.
Yeah, that's a big thing about this movie is like to talk about what's really going on, you have to go into spoiler territory because that's the whole point.
Exactly.
All the point is there.
So I highly recommend this movie, and as of today, it is available in North America on Blu-ray and most likely on demand. So check out this movie immediately after this and come back and check out our spoilers because this is a movie you're going to want to see. And as of right now, it is my favorite movie of 2017. Now, granted, I haven't seen too many 2017 movies.
Well, yeah, it's only February yet.
But right now, it is the movie to beat. All right, I'm going to cut this into earlier into the video, but if you're one of those people who need to be warned about the fact that there's animal deaths in a movie, yeah, a cat dies at one point in this movie, so just be warned. So let us move on to the spoilers. Alrighty then. So this movie basically opens up with this little girl who's in this jail cell and she's actually counting down like the minutes before they come to get her because she's got like the formula of them coming in to get her like down pat.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there and someone who didn't really know what the movie was about, I'm sitting there going like, oh shit, she's a prisoner of some kind. Oh, what's going on here? What's actually happening? And they'll put her in this super like almost like what would you call it, like
Hannibal Lecter
harness.
Hannibal Lecter outfit. Yeah,
put her in this like Hannibal Lecter like wheelchair outfit and like wheel her into this one room where this teacher will just teach them stuff about life and give them these tests and things. And you're like, oh wow, this is some weird dystopian shit. I was not expecting this.
It does feel like it was meant to feel like like something like 1984 or
I was thinking about THX
or THX.
I was thinking like THX while we were watching it. The George Lucas dystopian feature film, and so you're sitting there going like, okay, so obviously the people that are wheel them out are scared of them. That much is very obvious because they have like multiple firearms on them. They have to keep a distance. They have to put like this lotion on. So you're sitting there like me. If you weren't quite sure where this was going, all you knew is that what was a zombie story. What's going on here? And then what really becomes obvious as the thing goes on is that these kids, including the little girl that we're following, are zombies.
Yeah.
But they're different from the normal zombies in that they seem to be able to actually at least mimic human behavior, if not outright be human.
Yeah. It seems to be that the fungal growth which attacks the brain, if you're born with it, it becomes a symbiote.
Yeah.
But if you're not born with it, then it's just a parasite.
And what the scientists in this military base, so essentially this is like a sequel to Day of the Dead in a certain way.
Yeah.
So these scientists in this military base are studying these kids and are actually educating them to figure out, is this just fungal imitation or is this a symbiosis? Is this the fungus acting as a partner with the human host? Or is the human host gone and it's just a shell for the fungus to continue its agenda?
Yeah.
And so you have these multiple, essentially, what does human mean arguments between the teacher who sees the humanity in at least the little girl, maybe not the rest of them, but definitely the little girl, because she's showing herself to be really smart, really intelligent, and really bright. Which I guess all mean the same thing. So
yeah.
So she starts seeing the humanity in this little girl, but the main scientist woman, who was that played by Glenn Close?
Yeah, the main scientist Glenn Close in the movie.
Yeah, okay. So she believes that the girl is just imitating really well. That she's just the best imitator among the bunch, and that she's not getting necessarily smarter so much as the fungus is getting smarter.
Yeah.
And so she does not believe that they're actually human. She believes they're just pale imitations. But she does believe that within them holds the key to a cure to zombification. So you have those two forces fighting, and then you have this third voice, which is essentially I guess sergeant or general or whatever he was, the head of the military base.
The head
guy,
of the base. Yeah.
Who is way more practical of like it doesn't matter, they're monsters, we should just put them down. Like, he's way more the practical voice.
Very, very dispassionate
like,
for the most
it's
part.
very obvious to him that the longer we keep these things around, the more dangerous they are, and the more we get attached to them, the more dangerous they are, because if they are, like the one scientist says, then we're fucked, but if they're like the other scientist says, we can't take that risk. Like,
yeah.
You know, so you have these three forces fighting, and they're not all in 100% alignment, because the main scientist chick wants to keep them around to find the cure, but the soldier does not.
Yeah, the soldier does not, and the teacher has become attached to them.
Yes, and so you have these three forces, and it kind of forms this weird, like, mother, dad, and, like, grandmother, like, kind of relationship.
The thing I thought was really good is it's very, very clear. The teacher is not 100% right. This is not love will win the day. You know,
well, especially given what happens at certain points.
Yes.
Like, she actually is a danger. She almost does kill her. Like, you know, it's one of those things where the one soldier saying, like, no, don't ever forget that they're monsters, and taking off, like, they put this, like, cream on them that gets rid of their smell, because the zombies get attracted to the smell and the sound, but, like, the smell is the main one. So they put this cream on it, and he washed it off and put it next to one of the zombies' face, and they freaked out, and they're no longer human. Zombies.
They don't act human at all.
And,
and the movie does this really kind of cool stop motion-y editing thing.
Oh god, they adjust the mouth to make it look a little bigger than normal, and it's really cool when they zombie out. And they have this weird, like, zombie language that I thought was really interesting.
Yes,
because the zombies actually do communicate, kind of like raptors in, like, the Lost World.
Yeah, they do. Like, there's this very subtle hint the entire time that the fungus actually is intelligent.
Yes. You
know, they don't go too far into that, but it's very clear that when it's like, well, how smart is the fungus? That's actually a question.
Absolutely, and it's part of their research too.
Yeah. They did that kind of thing way better than The Happening did.
Oh, I'd have to agree. Because The Happening did it in Ridiculous, where they're running away from the wind.
Yeah.
Good luck there.
Yeah.
But so you have this conflict where, like, the military guy makes the point, just like, no, don't touch them. This is why. Don't ever forget. They'll eat you. And the teacher's like, okay. And then later the teacher, like, goes in by herself when one of the soldiers isn't around to help the little girl, because one of the soldiers forgot to unstrap her. And she almost eats her.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those wake-up calls where, like, oh no, like, he's right about this one point.
Yeah.
you know?
He's right. They will attack you if they can.
But on the other hand, it's very obvious that this little girl isn't just an imitation. She is showing signs of symbiosis. She is showing signs of intelligence. She can problem solve, and she has an imagination.
Yeah, she has an imagination, which none of the others do.
None of the others do, which what makes her special, because basically the teacher starts teaching them about mythological concepts. And one of the stories she tells is the story of one story of Prometheus and one story of Pandora.
Yep.
And it's very obvious, based on the story of Pandora, that that's where the title of the movie comes from.
Yes.
Because Pandora is the girl with all the gifts, and you're like, oh, so that would make the little girl Pandora, and you don't know the full extent of what that means until the end of the story.
Yeah, until the very last moment.
You know, and then that becomes clear. But it's very obvious that she's the girl with all the gifts. And the question becomes, as the movie goes on, is that because she's the key to the cure? Is that because she's the birth of a new race of people?
Yeah.
Is that because she is the savior of humanity or the end of humanity?
Yeah.
Because Pandora's box, you know, it's...
Yeah. All the ills of humanity are contained within the box.
You know, and I actually really liked that mythological aspect. It added this whole, like, other layer to the movie that just made it, like, it's so juicy to bite into.
Yeah, it is. And since we're in the spoiler section...
Yes, we are in the spoiler section.
We might as well just go into it. Yeah. Humanity doesn't make it.
No, because this movie ultimately culminates into this final confrontation with the little girl and the scientist. And the scientist has pretty much knocked out everyone else, because the scientist is dying because of a cut she got earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
And so she's basically decided, like, this is my last chance. I have to find this cure to save humanity. And the little girl knows that in order for this cure to work, she must die.
Yeah, and so there's no question of this.
So there becomes this confrontation between her and the scientist, where the scientist is just like, please, let me do this. You'll save Justine, the teacher. You'll save the soldier guy. You'll save all of us if you just let me do this. And she's like, so if you do this, the zombies, and me, and they actually ran into a whole bunch of little children that were like her, because
Yeah.
it turns out if someone was bitten by the zombie and infected and gave birth to someone before they became infected, then they created this new generation of zombie that has intelligence and acts like human, but is symbiotic with the fungus.
Yeah.
So essentially, they're another stage of human evolution in a weird way. And so this question becomes, the girl poses the question of just like, well, why should I die so that you all may live? Why should we, my people, die so that you all may live? Essentially, it's the Planet of the Apes question.
Yeah, it is. It is a Planet of the Apes question.
Now you have a species question. And ultimately, the girl ends up concluding that no, you guys had your time. You had your chance. Now it's our time. We're the next stage. Humanity and society will live through us.
Yeah.
And she goes, earlier in the movie, they established that the last stage of the first generation of zombies evolution is they form this giant, essentially like...
Yeah, they form into this giant tree.
Yeah, this giant tree filled with all these pods, and if the pods burst open, at that point, the scientist theorizes that the virus or the fungus will become airborne. So
because they're spores.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now anyone within the vicinity of this, and most likely the whole world, because there's a giant tree they fucking find, will be infected by this thing, and it will grow, and it'll probably grow more trees. So at that point, the world would just be zombie. And the little girl grabs a box of matches, and basically the Prometheus thing.
Yeah. She lights the tree on
fire. Releases all the
spores.
spores, of essentially giving the whole world up for the zombies. And Glenn Close runs after her and then gets eaten by all the kid zombie symbiosis tribes. And at that point, it becomes clear, no, this is the new society. It's going to be these kids and her as their leader. And the only surviving person ends up being Justine. And Justine, which they say earlier, which someone comments earlier in the movie, they think she's like Jesus. The
little girl looks at her like Jesus. Yeah.
And so she essentially becomes the teacher of the kids of the societal way so that humanity can live on through these symbiotic kids. Yeah,
because they find an airtight laboratory.
Yes.
And at the end, the little girl seals Justine in the laboratory. But the laboratory's got these really big windows looking outside. So basically, she's teaching them through the window so Justine stays safe and the children roam the earth.
Absolutely, and it's very obvious.
She's the hope left in the box.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's also a nice mirror image, because at the beginning of the movie, she was teaching the girl in the box.
Yeah.
And now she's in the box teaching everyone outside of the box. And basically, it's one of those things where it's not a black and white ending. It's yes, humanity is gone as we know it, but there is these new humans that are taking over, and humanity continues through them.
Yeah.
You know, like the scientist, Glenn Close, her version of humanity, that's gone. It's dead. But humanity is not gone.
Yeah. By the end of it, the child zombies are starting to talk.
Yes. They're already like are operating kind of like on caveman levels as it is.
Yeah.
And with someone like Justine to teach them even beyond that concepts way beyond that, then they are going to probably evolve and form civilizations way faster than we did.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's proven that once they start thinking, they're really good at it.
So basically, the main character, she is Pandora. She does open Pandora's box, and she's Prometheus. She brings fire to the
Yeah.
You know, and the teacher essentially did become the Jesus, the prophet, the person who teaches.
Yeah.
You know. And I just love that. I love this movie. It is so well rounded. And from what I was reading from some of the differences between it and the book, is apparently in the book the teacher finds out there is no the scientist finds out there is no cure. And I kind of liked that didn't happen in the movie.
I preferred the actual choice of the girl going, no, it's going to be zombie world now.
Yeah, because having that be left open means that it is a choice.
Yeah.
Because if there is no cure, then there is no choice. But having it actually be a choice makes it a conscious choice and gives that little girl so much agency.
Yeah.
And really shows that she is making a choice for herself. She is her own woman.
Yeah. She really is essentially one of the gods.
Yes, absolutely. Whereas the scientists finding out that there isn't a cure at that point, then there is no choice. Like, it's like, well, then...
yeah. At that point, there's no real dilemma. It's like, well, you're fucked anyway. Bye.
So I like the way the movie did it based on what I was reading the book did. Now, naturally, I would have to actually read the book to know how that works in context.
Yeah, but I didn't even realize there was a book until we saw the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a whole lot more that goes on in this movie, but like, I feel like everything we just talked about is why you should see it.
It's the big crux of it.
And I also like that it's kind of like a Robot with a Heart of Gold story, but about a little girl zombie. Kind of like how Fido's the Robot with the Heart of Gold story with a zombie, but that's more of a comedy, whereas this is more cerebral.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is just, it's really well shot. It's really well acted. It's really fucking well written. Like, this is a fantastically written story.
It is. Like I said, obviously it had a really good base, but like the scriptwriter did a great job.
And you end up
the dialogue's really good.
Characters that at the beginning of the movie you're like, oh, I'm probably not going to like this military guy. You really grow to love him by the end of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You really like that guy.
You start to realize why.
The closest you come to hating someone is Glenn Close.
Yes, especially towards the end where she's like begging the little girl to kill herself. Like, it's like,
yeah. But at the same time, you're like,
you understand
what's going. Yeah,
and that wouldn't be there if you knew there was no cure.
No. At
that point, you'd just be a monster. Like, you know.
Yeah, at that point, it's way too cut and dry.
You know, and I kind of like the fact that it's just like this whole story centered around who's the real monster, and it's just like, well, no one.
Yeah.
Like...
There was a lot. Oh god, there are a lot of stupid comments about whether this was a horror or a science fiction movie, and I'm like, it's both.
It's totally both.
It's totally both.
It's a dystopian movie with a whole lot of science at the center of it, but it's also a zombie movie.
Yeah.
You know, the
totally.
world has been taken over by zombies that will eat your fucking flesh and just devour you.
Yeah.
And if you're bitten, you will turn into a zombie. And it has the iconic moment from the zombie story, which is always my favorite moment of the zombie story, where someone gets infected and the person who loves them the most has to put them down.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite part of the zombie story.
It's a great moment.
It always works in Walking Dead. It always works in Dawn of the Dead. It always works in all these movies, especially Day of the Dead, which is the one that this one feels like it's like
it does.
Going
This feels like a continuation of Day of the Dead, except for the fact that the zombies work by totally different logic.
Yes, because these are actually fast zombies.
Oh yeah. They're like people. They move like people.
And they also they'll eat anything that is alive.
Yep.
And so that includes cats.
Oh man, her fucking eating that cat. Oh my god.
So yeah, like the little girl eats a cat at one point in the movie.
Yeah. And then she does that whole trick she does with the dog.
Because the zombies will essentially stand comatose in this kind of like plant-like state until something living walks past them. She grabs this dog, this like stray dog she finds, and then runs into the center of them and lets it loose, and the zombies just all run after it, so that the people trapped inside this building can get out of it.
Yeah, and you're like, that dog is fucked.
That dog is so fucked. Like, it doesn't show the dog dying the way it shows the cat dying, but you know that dog did not have a good day.
Yeah. Chances of survival very low.
I also love that fucking line where she's like looking at a picture of a cat. It's like, oh, you want a cat? I already had one. And she's like got the blood down her face from eating the cat. And I'm just like, oh man, that's great. And I also love watching the little girl just get more and more human-like as the story goes on.
Yeah.
Because when she starts off, she's very robotic. You know, it's very by the numbers, and you kind of get why Glenn Close might think that she's just, imitating.
Yeah.
But as it goes on, she starts to act like a little girl. She starts to behave like a little girl. She starts to like play with things. She starts to experiment, and you're like, oh, okay, so she is human.
Yeah. She is experiencing humanity.
And they often use the image of a cat to symbolize her, because she often has this picture of a cat that she stole from someone. That
yeah. Well, because like a cat, she's predatory.
Absolutely.
She's a predatory creature, but she's small.
And you can see as the story goes on that she becomes more and more like cat-like. And it's kind of great, especially when she starts establishing dominance when she meets all this little kid gang,
god,
which is very much
she
like
starts ruling the tribal
kids. It's very much like Lord of the Flies.
Oh
I love it.
Where she's just screaming and like you're waving because she's the one who knows how to use the stick.
Yes.
And they're all like, whoa, she's got the stick. Oh shit.
She smashes the head open of their leader so that she becomes the leader and she can save her human friends. Like, this is a really great movie.
Yeah, it's really well done.
This is really fucking good. Like, oh man, I've heard some mixed things about this movie. I heard mostly positive, but then I heard like towards the release of it, some people who didn't like it, and I'm like, I don't get the people who don't like this movie.
It's a really good movie. Visually, one of the things I thought was really interesting is it was a very simple thing that they did, but everything is tinted yellow.
Yeah,
and the reason you do that is because we're talking about plants and fire and the dawn and a new world.
Fungi.
It's the sun. You know,
yeah.
You're using color to symbolize the sun.
And absolutely, and there's a lot of like really beautiful shots of like the sun, especially since this is a little girl who's been trapped underground.
Yeah.
In this military base for so long that like her experience with the sun and plant life it kind of gets you teary-eyed. You're like,
it does. One of the things I saw in this movie that I haven't seen in a lot of them, and this is mainly something that happens in the big wide wilderness shots where they got that huge depth of field, fucking around with the picture's focus.
Oh yeah.
To draw your attention.
Yeah, this movie does that well.
Yeah, it does it. It does.
It's almost Hitchcockian in the way it does that.
Yeah. But I've noticed like, oh shit, no, that's actually something that like digital cinema can do that the old way couldn't, because you couldn't change focus that quickly.
Oh yeah, you could really do it now.
Oh yeah, and they do it a lot. Like you're gonna finding yourself going like, you're like, whoa, why? I'm looking at everything, and it's they're moving they're literally changing the depth of focus to draw your attention to things, which is a really, really masterful move.
This is also a movie where everyone who dies you kind of feel bad about.
Like, totally.
Like the two soldiers that constantly come and greet her and bring her to the classroom. Like they treat her like she's a monster, but you totally understand why as the movie goes on. And when those two die, you feel really bad about it.
Yeah. You don't disagree with anybody.
No.
You know, you don't disagree with anybody, and that's really rare. Like that's a move that usually it takes someone like a Dostoevsky to make.
Well, yeah, because usually there is usually even in really good movies there will be one straw man, one purely evil character, but there isn't in this.
No, not really.
No, like everyone has a really important thing at stake. Everyone has a really important point, and everyone has a really important goal. And you understand why they're all at odds with one another.
Yep.
But you also understand why they need each other to keep going. Like,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, it's the zombie story, the classic survival story, which is often done with the zombie story.
Yeah, especially these days.
Yeah. And you know, the birth of a new world, it's all those things. It's really, really, it's super multifaceted. You know, so if you like apocalyptic scenarios, if you like zombie movies,
if you like The Last of Us,
you're
gonna like this movie.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely thumbs up.